Hello everyone, Justin with Deep Dive Stocks here, and today is your after hours market dive for Monday, September 22nd. Today we're going to look at silver, Bitcoin, GME, and NVDA. So let's get started. On the daily here for silver, we see bullish liquidity that started in about June, and since then we are up to all-time highs of 31% at 40.04. There was a historic level here at 40 that spot seems to have just jumped right over. If we add LDPM, we see that we have a nice bull stack with LDPM, while this bullish liquidity with LDPS shines through. So let's look at the 15-minute and see how things progress through the day. And it does seem like there is a little bit of bearish liquidity happening, probably some profit taking. Let's take a look. So we jump up in the pre-market, and then we start getting those faint LDPMs. Remember, that's pretty indicative of profit taking, introduce some bearish liquidity, and then we've been testing LDPM L5 resistance throughout the day, and it looks like we broke through. So on the near term, it does look like a little bit of a pullback is likely, and that's about 2% down to the next LDPM support at 39.11. So in the near term, we definitely see some evidence of a near-term pullback forming, but that daily still showing that nice bullish liquidity tells us of much longer time horizons that are much more bullish. Moving to Bitcoin on the daily, we see this aggressive ask walking in, flowing already to the bid. So that means that the ask is pushing all the way down to that organic bid, and we do have LDPS printing bearish prints, while testing LDPM L7 for support. So this is a pretty bearish finding. Last time it looks like that happened, we did get a little bit of a bounce. Looks like we got snagged on LDPM L6, the resistance, and it looks like the bullish liquidity ran out, and we've moved swiftly back to LDPM L7. So on the long term for the daily for Bitcoin, that is quite bearish. It is a bearish print because essentially the entirety of Bitcoin's current existence is resting on that LDPM L5 or L7 it was. Let's take a quick look at how things progress for Bitcoin on the 15 minutes since the start of the day. We got that bearish liquidity to start things out. Looks like it pushed price down. We had a little bit of a dip buying coming in, and it looks like they served a reasonable purpose. They introduced some bullish liquidity, but not enough to get over LDPM L5 resistance. And that is where we are currently ending this little replay. It is worth noting here on the 15-minute as well that this is a bear or bull trap. So we have that LDPM 7, LDPM 6, LDPM 5. So it's a bear stack for LDPM, but LDPS is printing these bullish prints. So that mismatch tells us that this is a very aggressive bullish performance, but one that is very fleeting. And so there's an increased risk of a rapid reversion back to essentially where the bull trap started. So in terms of like the progress, we would expect bullish liquidity as long as it continues, so to move up to LDPM L6, and then if it breaks through LDPM L7, but in the context of keeping a very close eye out for any introduction of bearish liquidity. I'm surprised LDPS actually isn't printing bearish already with I guess it's an aggressive bid in the bull trap, but as soon as that aggressive bid disappears, we can expect a rapid return to where spot was. And so the name of the game just becomes keeping an eye out for that aggressive bid, making sure it is there. As long as it's there, things should continue to move up. But as soon as that aggressive bid disappears, so too does the bull trap. GME on the daily is exciting. We've been monitoring this bullish liquidity for a minute, and it broke through last week above LDPM L7. And it's now, as expected, moving towards LDPM L6, which is currently at 29.37, and that is currently located 10% away. Pretty exciting. Nothing here on the daily says that is going to be interrupted. We still have that nice bullish, the bullish LDPS prints, and it looks like we're on our way to LDPM L6. On the more short term, on the 15-minute, it looks like we do have a little bit of bearish liquidity popping through, and it looks like we're resting on LDPM L7, but it looks like LDPM L5 has been a pretty good support, and it also looks like it's on its way. So a little bit of a mixed, but overall with LDPS being bearish, we do expect it to kind of keep testing that support, and the ideal is that the support will inject enough bullish liquidity So LDPS stops printing these red bars and we can go back to having just completely nice bullish thoughts. But we can see here with that LDPM L3, there's definitely some profit taking going on. And so it's going to be a battle between the profit takers and that organic bid here at LDPM L7. It is worth noting that this is a bull trap, but we can see LDPM L5 is already working to undo that, right? So it's slowly inverting the stack. You know, that's like the first step of it. So there are hopeful signs that this bull trap will dissolve rather than spring. It's kind of like the two outcomes. So if it dissolves, that means that, you know, conditions in the market switch to follow the lead of that aggressive bid, versus the trap, which is where the bull, you know, the trap remains and then price ran, you know, the aggressive party disappears and the price rapidly reverts. So on the near term, it looks like turbulence as this works its way out. But again, on the longer term, on the daily, I mean, the skies look clear up until 29.37. And so there's no real apparent reason why that shouldn't be the case. On the daily, I would look out for this LDPM L3, these profit takers. Right now they're dip buying, so they're down here below spot. But if we start seeing LDPM L3 work its way up, then, you know, the headwinds are building against a successful LDPM L6 crossover. But that'll be something to look out for tomorrow. For today, things look good. Now, NVIDIA is interesting because it's up about 4% today on some fun news with OpenAI, but we see that still no LDPS is not excited. LDPS is continuing to print bearish prints here on NVIDIA, and so despite this almost 4% day, we would expect another mean reversion back to LDPM L5 for another bout of testing. And that's kind of all there is there on the daily. It's exciting with the price appreciation, but the environment it finds that that we are finding that price appreciation in is tenuous. We can already see on the 15-minute we have that profit taking happening. This should be a pretty familiar sight for those who have been following along. So we have this aggressive bid walking in at around noon today. We had a little bit. We had the. We can put this up on. Let's watch this real quick. So we had that bullish liquidity as market opened, and then we had that massive aggressive bid cascade walk in, and now there should be a pretty familiar sight where price is stagnating. We have this profit taking, and so we should start seeing So the name of the game is that LDPM L5 and spot are likely going to meet, which it is about 2.53% down, so that is nicely within that mean reversion area. And so we're just going to have to keep an eye out for the introduction of any bearish liquidity as these two set to meet, which if we do some fun little drawing. LDPM is a vector field, by the way, so you can actually extend it out without worrying too much about just kind of drawing random lines. But if we do expect the price to stagnate and LDPM to continue along its anticipated vector trajectory, then Tuesday around 6:45 we should start seeing is when we're going to start wanting to keep an eye out for if there's any bearish liquidity being introduced. If there is bearish liquidity, then we can expect what did we just saw it, right? We can expect this sort of deal where the bearish liquidity as LDPM spot and LDPM approaches, and then eventually it breaks through. And then the outcome then would be to fall back down to wherever LDPM L6 and LDPM L7 end up when those two meet. So overall, pretty bullish liquidity noted on the daily throughout a lot of areas, but it looks like there's a little bit of sparks of bearish liquidity when we zoom in on these individual equities, and it looks like there's a good amount of profit taking underway, except for Bitcoin, where Bitcoin really is just in a full-on, I guess we can inverse all of that for Bitcoin, right? Because Bitcoin was bearish on the daily, and on the 15-minute, it does look bullish, but it is a bull trap. So looks like the market is not willing yet to give us any free lunches. So, all right, guys, that is your Deep Dive Stocks After Hours Market Dive with Justin. Thank you for coming, and I will see you guys next time. Adios.